Okay, peoples, try that link. I'm gonna try to say something. Hello. Okay. I'm now waiting to see if people can actually join this thing. Just give it a sec. I just started it. Alright. Hey, it's Blaze Weednix. Yo. Blaze Weednix. I'm trying to remember your alter ego. Is it Yuki-chan? Blaze Weednix. Who are you? You've got that other alias. Yuki-chan, right? Or Chan. Chan. Or... Damn. Alright. So, I'm wondering what is the latency... Someone send me a message. Someone send me a smiley. I'm gonna let you know when I get it. Smiley, where are you? Where are you, Smiley? There's like a 15-second delay, but it's not stuttering, says Dr. Murillo. Dr. Murillo, did I read that 15 seconds after you said that? Oh yeah, Dr. Murillo, you're Blaze Weednix. Got it. Okay. So the delay is 15 seconds. Alright. Cool. Alright then. Maybe we can finally start actually getting into this stuff with SNES Tracker. So, I don't know if you got to sort of hear anything I was saying in my earlier stream, but I was talking about how I have like a main application window, and then I've got these tabs that kind of change the content of the main application window. And then I started talking about how when I originally started developing this application, it was a combination of a program called VSPC Play and fusing it with a newer APU emulator, a newer, more accurate one. And when I initially brought those two things together, it was just like, okay, just like very kind of difficult to say the least. And that kind of laid the groundwork, though, for everything I have. And when I originally started making it, I didn't have these tabs, and I threw the tabs in there. Basically, long story short is, I later started making these window classes when I made my first sub-window. And my first sub-window is when you go to Edit Options. And the video and audio is desynced. No! How can you tell, though? I'm barely doing anything. Maybe when I clicked on the tabs. Ah, man. Video and audio desynced. It's just like another problem that I'm not sure how to solve, and I'm not sure if it's just because my computer is so... It's got such a high demand right now for its little engine. I'm gonna keep going though. It's not too bad. So yeah, whoa, did you see that? Okay, so I don't know if you got that, but when I opened this new window, it actually showed like the IRC content in the window for a brief second. But let's ignore that for a second. So when I made this window, it's the first time I made my own sort of window class. And of course, one of the things I did that I'm going to start getting away from, that sort of decoupling of the SDL implementation from these classes. But yes, currently this window class has a bunch of SDL implementation. It's basically like exactly SDL window implementation. So, but even before we start decoupling stuff, there's still better ways of organizing the code even within the SDL implementation classes. And the one that I'm focused on right now is how this. Oh God, that's my cell phone. It's like a bug number. Getting a lot of. I don't get a lot of spam calls, but I don't pick those up anymore. Don't even get me started on some of the funny sort of social engineering kind of calls I've had. It's just like, no. So, yeah. SDL Windows and stuff. What the hell am I saying? Alright. see how like there's a lot of stuff, but I'm going to try my best to keep track of it. So we got this based. It stands for base debugger, or the debugger base class. And I was saying in the earlier stream that it's kind of where when I think that there's stuff that I want everything to potentially have access to, because this is still a prototype and I'm not really sure what exactly I want to wire into what yet. And I have a problem giving references to everything to like a million other classes. It just bothers me, so I haven't gotten over that. So I got this base class, and what happened since I originally started making the app, before I made like a window object, and I kind of had a lot of VSPC play base code, I guess. I don't know. I actually, if we go back into SNES Tracker, you'll the memory tab is actually the main window. It's like, it gets even weirder. Hey, what the hell? Yeah, I think I might have added in a piece of code that disabled the X from actually processing, so I'm going to have to use the escape key. Now that's a whole nother thing that I definitely somehow, oh yeah, that's an old version of the program. I probably fixed that already. Oh, just another thing. So like, I completely deleted everything when I went to refactor, and I don't have the most up-to-date app, and now I can't compile it either. Yeah, go me. So we got this old version that's kind of buggy. I hope that's the old version. Anyway, the memory tab is the main window, and then to make things further broken up is I have this thing called a render context, which has all of the SDL sort of the things like the objects that you need if you actually want to render to the screen in this global static class called a render context, and it's crazy to say the least. I have like a lot of stuff kind of like accessing this global render context, but it'll be easy to do what I'm going to do. What I'm doing is I'm taking all of that render stuff. I'm going to have a new main window that actually is inheriting from that window class that I made, like the other windows, like the option window, and I have an SPC export window too that I haven't showed. Because I was actually in the middle of adding SPC export, and then I realized that like I cannot deal with this crap. It's got to get refactored. So, let's see if I can open that up. Yeah, so here's another window here. And these window classes are nice because they've got all of the render objects, and I actually just made a new structure to hold all of them because there's a few of them. So just make that more encapsulated. And then I can hopefully get rid of that render context thing just floating out in the open, because I realized that I actually can encapsulate that. I don't really need it globally accessible because I've learned to better organize my windows, and I don't know, I'm feeling good about this. So I'll be moving that into the main window. And then a lot of that stuff that's in that based class, I can move also into the main window. Like in the base class, when I was making this, a lot a lot of those objects actually are the main window objects. So I can better organize that into this new main window class. And an example of that is, since I hadn't actually had it properly structured, I made this variable called a grand mode, and that would basically tell the program if I was in the memory tab, if I was in the DSP tab, or if I was in the instrument tab. Because remember, my memory tab was called the main window because it used to be the only window, and then I made these new tabs ideas, but the ideas, came together, but now I have a better way of structuring it. It's going to be so much better. Even this menu bar in the current implementation that isn't improved yet, each tab actually draws the menu bar itself. But now with this sort of hierarchical structure I'm putting in, there's going to be this main window sort of drawing. It's in part of like the game loop, so to speak. The main window drawing routine will draw the menu bar itself instead of having all these other ones draw it themselves. And then after it draws, it'll call whatever the active tab is drawing routine. And that's just so much better. So that's nice because it's always good to get rid of sort of derivative function calling that isn't necessary and have it only lie in one location. Because if you have these sort of copies and you wanted to change them, you'd have to change each and every single one. That's always something I try to do in my programming if I can. Sometimes I'm not sure how to in certain circumstances, but I'm always trying to narrow it down so that I only have to change one thing to change potential derivatives that could have existed. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I didn't actually look at the chat in a while. So let's see what people wrote. Tabs are good. I like them. You're drawing all the stuff by yourself instead of using the OS resources. So one of the things, I'm really glad you asked me about this because there's a lot of good topics to talk about based on that. Since right now, as you know, this is it's all the class objects or the class designs have these SDL implementation specifics. Now SDL isn't just GUI; it's also audio implementation. So even the music player's audio implementation has SDL specifics. SDL does all that stuff, even querying the mouse. That's SDL, querying the mouse for me and letting me know when someone clicks on a certain XY coordinate. Those are just some examples. But I've definitely been meaning to convey how it's not just the GUI using SDL, it's got other sort of things. And another thing about SDL is that SDL only gives you like a surface, and it's your responsibility to put stuff on the surface. Whereas a library like Qt actually gives you the widgets, the sort of the native operating system-esque widgets. I say esque because I'm not sure if there's sort of like convolution involved in saying that they're native. But you get the buttons, you get the lists, you get the sort of context menus that you would expect in an app. I'm trying to think of an example. Like you see how I actually made this context menu and it's inside my app. You know how in a normal Windows application you actually get, like a gray, I don't know, it depends on your theme, but you get like that sort of like context menu that's separate from the app content part of the window. That stuff Qt will give you more of that type of stuff. SDL just gives you a surface and it's like, yo, you do the rest. I gave you something to draw on, and that's it. And I like it for some reason. I don't know why. Like I've used Qt in the past, and I Qt is cool too. The only thing about Qt is that it's gigantic, but it's cool too. I don't know why I'm so like. against it. I don't know. Like there's a lot of like little thoughts that I have simultaneously about Qt and why I'm not migrating it to it immediately. So it's hard to kind of pick each one apart because there's like 20 of them at the same time and they're all little things. So, and I'm not feeling like the motivation to try to identify each and every single one of them. But even if I wanted to use Qt, okay, I missed some IRC chats here. All right, I get it. Oh yeah, so it's a good thing you asked that, Yuki-chan, about Qt's impact. Compile times. Well, this is one of the biggest sort of independent projects I worked on, and actually, I worked on this thing called Meatball. It was a 2D game with SDL, and it was bigger than this. And yeah, ugh. Compile times aren't fun. But I'm getting a little off track, and I feel like those compile times could have been optimized. I was like, that was like, I don't know, that had to be like 10 years ago. So I didn't have nearly as much knowledge. Blech. Trying to stay focused on something. The impact of Qt, yeah. So you guys have heard of Vue, right? Vue is like probably the most well-regarded SNES emulator guy. Who's another guy? Just to give more than just Vue, No Cache is a big emulator creator dude with great documentation, like his full SNES document. I'm thinking of Anomi, who's written really great docs. I want to give more credit to other people like Navixty and I don't know who else, but in order to stay on track in my head, I'm going to just focus on Vue. And Vue actually already started implementing my sort of dream of a user interface abstraction layer. And it's kind of confusing because you would think that something like Qt or SDL or any of those other ones, WX widgets, which I don't have experience in, there's other ones too. You think that would just be it, right? But the problem I have with them is that it's still implementation specific to me. I might have a flaw in my understanding of moving forward with these libraries, but to me, like, I just want to be able to design my application in a sort of pseudo-code way. I just want to say, here, I want a button. I just want a button, I just want to be able to kind of code it in this nice, vague way. And the first thing I'm thinking about in Qt that makes it not so abstract is that, first of all, your button's called a Q button. So you're already got this Q there, and I know that sounds kind of weird, like a small complaint, and you could easily have like a preprocessor definition. At that level, of course, there's going to be way more problems than just putting the Q out of the name button. But you get what I'm saying? I hope that I can find a way to be able to code my application so I can just say, I want a button. This is the text for the button. Put the button at this place on my app. I don't care if it's SDL. I don't care if it's Qt. I just want a button. All right, let's put a text. Let's put a block of text over here. I don't care how it gets there. I just want some text there. Qt calls it a Q label. And of course I forgot blog. I knew I left people out. Blog's awesome. I don't know where he is, but much love to blog. Class button. All right, so see how you're talking about class button, Q button? That is probably, I don't know if I have to take it that far with making an object that inherits Q button, but you're getting to what will be a library specific implementation. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I still need an abstraction layer, but you're getting to where I feel like you're getting to sort of the implementation side of the abstraction layer. Like, just the fact that there's a need for an abstraction layer confuses me, though. I just figured that would have been a part of the whole paradigm of these cross-platform GUI libraries. basically what I'm going to have is like let's look at it as a fork, right? What's going to happen is ideally when I'm working on SNES Tracker, I'm going to be only talking to this sort of generic GUI element classes. It's just going to be like, I want a button, put the button there, just for an example. And then over here, there's going to be this sort of untouched, ideally after it's initially implemented, sort of, it's the API abstraction. So over here, it's just like, I've got a button, I want it to say this. And then over here, it's going to be like the implementation class. And it's going to be like, he wants a button. Okay, we're going to be doing some library-specific things to make that happen that person who's using the class doesn't really know or care about. Of course, since I might have to write it all, I'm going to have to know about both ends. But this will just make the part that faces SNES Tracker so much cleaner and easier to work with, and not have to look at all of the library-specific implementation variables and functions, and just bam, mind explodes. So there's a lot to think about. I'm already thinking about how normally you would abstract that, not abstract it, but you would hide that stuff that shouldn't be cared about in the private section of the class. But I want to be able to extract it so that I can have the convenience of being able to use a library. I'm hoping that this dream isn't too high of a dream that's sort of, I hope it's accomplishable, but since I don't know, I'm just kind of, some people would say I'm taking a risk. I don't know, but I want to be able to basically plug in the implementation. Rather than have the implementation there and it's private and it's kind of concrete and sticks, I want to be able to kind of have it more modular. All right, I want SDL to be the sort of back end or the implementation. Oh, no, I don't. And then it's just not there anymore. And then we can have something else be the back end. And I only do that because I want to be able to code sort of generically and not rely on a library. And I don't know. Is it such a bad desire? I don't know. I feel like it's really hard though, because Qt, and I'm looking back at the here's what the risk is. That's what I'm about to touch upon, is some of these libraries, right? What if their whole sort of approach or their implementation doesn't really agree at all with what I expect? Is there a good example of that? I don't know. And one of my concerns is it's like I have more concerns, but I don't want to present them all at once, because I'll just kind of not be able to. I can't look at so many concerns all at once, because I just can't even. I just can't even. All right, I'm gonna read some chat. Yeah, that's kind of an example, Yuki-chan. That's an example of sort of a GUI, library implementation that doesn't kind of have what you might want it to have. And then I guess in those cases, what's going to happen is you're going to identify, well, here's a library that wouldn't be so easily adapted, but maybe potentially so. And that's that. I mean, even if I only have one library implementation, which will probably be the start anyway, I still see it as beneficial. Just having the abstraction at all, I see as beneficial. With one library implementation, you don't see the added benefit of the hot pluggable aspect, because there's nothing else to hot plug in the first place. So you could have had the that one and only implementation, sort of just private. But I'm going to add it in there anyway, just so it can be potential. There's a potential. And I was talking about Vue because Vue already started working on a user interface abstraction library. He kind of warned me against trying something like this because he said it just takes way too long. And anyway, his is called Hiro, like the Japanese Hiro, and it's part of Higan. And it hasn't been released as its own thing yet. If you go to vue.org and you go to libraries, you'll see it's grayed out. You can't click on it, but you can probably get it from its latest Higan source. So that's a potential thing to check out in the future. Of course, first I'm going to work on doing what I'm doing now, the whole organization. See, like I'm still at an implementation specific code base, but it can still be organized better, irregardless. So this is like my first step. I'm kind of talking about a few steps ahead of me. All this mess with libraries seems so hard. Yeah, like that's why you might have heard me say in the past, I've used the word masochistic, and I don't mean, if you Google that, you might see the word sexual. I don't have a sort of sexual thing from it, but I think that I like the challenges, even if they're sort of self-induced via programming. Like I haven't told anyone this, but I've been working on a game. I can't believe I'm going to tell you guys. I'll tell you guys this, but I ported a game from Z80 assembly to Huck 6280, which is a derivative of the 6502. That's PC Engine, TurboGrafx 16, and I'm actually turning it into an arcade game. And I have all these limitations because I'm writing it for the PC Engine, and there's just so many limitations that it's like, for some reason I really enjoy it, and I'm writing it in assembly language, and I could easily just like make the same thing happen in C with some SDL, for instance. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it. I think what it was is that my childhood dream was, I was 5 years old. I was watching a Super Nintendo. I was playing with my brother, and I just said to myself, I want to learn how that stuff's done. And as I got older, more higher level languages became a thing, especially web programming and stuff. But I was so fascinated with the low level hardware that inspired me to begin anyways. So and it's faster. I mean, there's definitely pros to it too, even if there's a lot of cons as far as needing to be way more persevering. But that's how I am anyways. So I think that there's a general consensus, even in BAPA, because we're all making a lot of chip tunes and stuff, that stuff is sort of like a less reward for a higher amount of effort. Like learning to use a tracker and not having all that control over the sounds as you would in a modern DAW, like I don't know, what's that, Pro Logic, whatever, Logic Pro, and I don't know, Pro Tools, even Renoise. Renoise is kind of cool because it gives you the DSP effects and you can track with them. I really dig that. Now I gotta read more of this chat. Well, I'm really happy that you got that effect. I'm almost kind of jealous because I like scripting in Bash, but for some reason I'm not a big, I don't really get off on a lot of, you know what, I'm everything. I remember I had an ex-girlfriend, she told me, you know what, you're just everything. So it's kind of hard for me to categorize myself when I'm a different thing at different times. I did one time get really into JavaScript, but that was sort of a brief one-off, I guess. And actually, I don't know if you heard about this, Yuki-chan. I was talking about, I have a Dropcam Pro somewhere behind me, probably not in your visibility, but I did a super duper hacking job. Like the hacking job I did on that was so good that I could probably send all of the documentation that I made privately to the company and probably get hired. Or I could do like a conference at, like DEF CON or something. But if I actually took the time, to get into all those hardcore details about how that actually ended up, I got in there, and did everything. But I can't get into that now. It's too much. But basically, I got a smile on my face. Does that say enough? Basically, hacked the shit out of that, and it uses Lua internally. It uses Lua bytecode. And now I know this has nothing to do with SNES Tracker, but I'm too passionate about it to let it go. Lua bytecode. So I made this thing. Now, obviously, if you're gonna do like really big things in Bash and you're calling all these external programs, it's gonna be slow. But I actually used Bash, and I used its newer versions array. You know how they have like the arrays, associative arrays or whatever. What does the firmware have an embedded like? Why does the firmware have an embedded Lua bytecode interpreter or JIT? I can't really answer that question. I should know it, but let me talk about what I want to tell you. Is I took the Lua bytecode because I learned that it uses Google protobufs to talk to the server. There's the cloud server, but it was all in bytecode. So I analyzed the bytecode, and I figured out some patterns, and I put every single pattern that I learned in. I wish I could show it to you, and basically reconstructed the Google protobuf definitions from the Lua bytecode, and then I could have the convenience of the protobufs, and then I wrote my own sort of man in the middle, because it's using SSL, and I got root access to the camera, so I was able to, let's see, replace some kind of SSL authority file or whatever, and I actually made my own contributions to this program called MITM proxy, man in the middle proxy, to allow you to script your own sort of code during raw TCP interactions over OpenSSL. And what I did is I would capture the communications going on. Now remember, all these communications are going through this proprietary Google protobufs format stuff. And it's some sort of, let's just keep it generic, sort of proprietary encapsulated RTP data. But I figured out how to sort of restream that data locally to get my own local stream. And using some FFmpeg customized commands, I could either restream it or archive it, or even archive it by the hour and stuff. So I had all that going, and usually the stream's only going directly to them, and you gotta pay them to archive it. So that was kind of like my hack to get my own archive. The stream is dying. You gotta be kidding me. The stream is dying. Damn it. Okay, I'm gonna assume that the stream isn't fully dead. I'm gonna keep talking. I'm trying not to be mad at myself for going way out of SNES Tracker related things. And I'm not sure if I can do that. But yeah, that was a really fun thing. I need a drink. Let me turn my light on. Atlantic. I mean, I'm around the Atlantic. Just saying. So yeah, I'm still in grub mode. This went way longer than I thought it would. I thought I was just gonna stream for like some 15 minutes, but my passion soared during this stream. So It usually doesn't. When I'm programming alone, I'm just kind of like meh. I'm in kind of like meh. But just having you guys here, I'm way more passionate about talking about this stuff. Didn't actually change anything. I didn't change anything in front of you guys. Um, I'm gonna try to change it. See, I got this grand mode. Yeah, I'm actually getting into the code now. We need a second to like sometimes I feel like an operating system trying to like change my threading context to another one. That's probably like the biggest challenge for me. Um, I remember when I was in college, one of my PhD candidate friends or whatever, PhD students, he used to feel the same way. Like changing context is the hardest thing for me. And I say, yeah, man, I know how you feel. So I'm having trouble doing that right now. I don't know. What do you guys think? Because I can't seem to function at the moment. I'm going to assume that this is lag instead of like a bigger issue. It's probably because I have SNES Tracker open. I just closed SNES Tracker. It should be a lot better. I don't think I've put it on my to-do list. I don't think I've actually, I'm not sure actually, but just for the sake of saying it, I'm not sure that, I gotta rephrase it again. I think that when the window isn't focused at all, the main app window, that there's probably a lot of stuff still processing that doesn't need to be. For instance, maybe like drawing routines are actually still happening. And I had that app open the whole time I was talking, and it was probably just chewing up a lot of CPU or something. But if that app is running, forget it. That APU emulator is definitely pretty resource needing. I have two. It's a mid 2009 MacBook Pro Core 2 Duo, 8 gigabytes of some sort of RAM. I don't know what speed. Probably an inadequate. It's not bad, but to today's standards. The thing I love about it is I don't like how those new MacBook Pros. And let me know if I'm wrong about this. By the way, Dr. Mario, if you bounce, thanks for watching the first legitimate stream, and it was nice talking to you. Yeah, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but what I love about this MacBook Pro is that it doesn't have the Lightning port, and if I understand the Lightning port correctly, which I didn't really bother to really learn about, is that if you want to use it for something, you got to buy some sort of adapter. And I don't see how you can use multiple adapters at the same time. Whereas on this computer, I've got Ethernet, I've got Firewire, mini DisplayPort, I got two USB, and I got an SD card, and I can use any of them at the same time. Alright, cool. I'm glad it was kind of fun. So, yeah. That's why I still use this thing. And I want to have a Mac, I'd have a newer one if that, for instance, wasn't an issue. If I can't have like that simultaneous thing going on, because even right now I got my mini DisplayPort plugged in. Granted, I don't have much else used, but I could, if I wanted to use my audio interface, I'd need that Firewire. I have a Firewire interface. So I'm not gonna buy a bunch of Lightning adapters and I can only use one of them at a time. But yeah, I haven't even researched that. That could be a falsehood. I could be could be. I might have that all wrong. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like my impression, and I've already stated how not well researched my impression is that Apple with their whole MacBooks and tablets just are appealing to basic consumers. So I can see that working for a basic consumer, but it's called the MacBook Pro for a reason, isn't it? Pro, professional. So, and if I'm talking too loud and peaking or whatever, I'm sorry. It probably is an evil attempt. I don't know what it is. I really don't. Just haven't bothered to look at it. I don't know if you'd like to ask them about it. If you see one that only has a single port on the side and you're interested in asking, that'd be cool, and then relay that information to me. That reminds me of one of the reasons why I really want a MacBook Pro. As you know, I'm trying to do this cross-platform support, and unfortunately, OS X or OS 10, if you prefer, is one of the operating systems that, again, under-researched evaluation coming. That's a harder OS to sort of emulate or install on a computer unless that computer was specifically designed with the hardware in mind that OS X can support. And I've seen people do that. They call it Hackintoshes. I don't want to go through all that. I might have to, but I like having a box that can support all those operating systems so that I can test for my cross-platform software. It's really nice. And each operating system sort of has its benefits against the other ones. Like I really like my Mac for multimedia work, whether it's producing a video or doing audio. I feel the experience is just so much snappier, polished. If I want to do like a live recording desktop stream on my Linux box or my same box, not even a box laptop, but OS X, it's just got it going on. Whereas on Linux, it's like, oh, I've got to manually learn how to configure a jack because there's no Linux package that already like figured all that out and made a nice polished version. Yeah, that's why I never used FamiTracker for the longest time. I had never used Wine until last week, never. And I don't know, it was just the right time, and I happened to be learning just on a whim how to cross-compile SNES Tracker for Windows using, I use Gentoo Linux, and it's got some really, really neat cross-compiler packages. The only downside is with Gentoo, you compile everything from source, so some people don't like that because there's, you gotta take some time for things to compile. But I've kind of been in that flow, and it was just so easy to get my cross compiler up and running, and even installing, certain software dependencies for SNES Tracker like zlib or SDL. With that cross compiler, I can actually use Gentoo's packaging management system or whatever. It's called Emerge. I can actually use that and seamlessly, with just a little bit of extra typing, have that package system get and compile packages for my cross compiler environment. That was pretty cool and convenient. Yeah. I think that's that's funny you mentioned Gentoo being the extremely difficult Linux, and I'm gonna try to talk about Jack again. Yeah, I don't know if masochism's the right word, but perseverance maybe. I remember being young, seeing Gentoo and just having that intuitive response that's like, that's what I want. It might have been because of the the challenge or that sort of feeling of eliteness or something involved with that Linux. Um, of course, that's something that I try to purge in my mind these days, sort of like eliteness thing. But Jack, yeah. So I'm pretty sure a lot of these desktop recording apps, you know how normally I don't know about Windows, but OS X and Linux, and it's kind of stuff I'm not super very smart in, but as far as I understand it, I'm thinking about ALSA, I'm thinking about ALSA, and I'm thinking about how normally all the apps will just write their audio samples directly to your sound card, and usually on a default system your sound card is your speaker, and you don't get to grab those samples and record them. And I'm pretty sure like the apps I'm using to do that, you might have heard of Soundflower, which I'm pretty sure is some sort of nice and neat package with Jack, and probably creating a fake ALSA sound card, like a loopback device, and sending those samples to record and to the real sound card, because that's what I had to do on Linux when I was trying to do my own desktop recording on Linux. And then there's just a lot of sort of neat GUI or GUI. I don't know if some people prefer one or the other elements with the screen recording app I use on OS X. Granted, I did pay for it. It's called ScreenFlick. And I can just drag the window size I want. I can explicitly define the width and the height. And I have a lot of customization options, like how I want when the mouse moves, if I want it, not only if, but how I want it, the window bounding box to sort of move, because I have a greater resolution than the normal HD resolution. But forget about that on Linux. Even if I want to define the bounding box, I've got to explicitly call the application from the command line with the width and the height, and I have to specify the x and the y coordinates of that rectangle, and I don't see a way to actually click it and drag it to move it after I've done so. So, just total. And there's no mouse follow behavior that I'm aware of. But yeah, Soundflower is a really nice tool that just simplifies the whole jack and fake loopback audio cards rewiring so that you can record it's normally, I think, mostly used for recording your desktop audio. It can probably be used for a whole slew of other things as well. But yeah, it's basically like fake sound cards so that you can sort of rewire to a higher degree. You ever drink aloe vera drink? I like this stuff. I don't know what it is about it, but oh hey, I just saw some of your old comments, like Family Tracker's lag in wine is awful, 500 milliseconds. I didn't have too bad of a lag. Oh, you didn't like it? Yeah, this one's got the pulp in it too, which I kind of like actually. I don't kind of like it. I enjoy it. To each his own. So, yeah, my Family Tracker lag wasn't too bad. So I was running it from my Gentoo Linux. Kind of brings to mind another thing. I'm wondering if I can put wine on my OS X. I've heard of that other app called Crossover. I think you got to pay for it. But I just can't be bothered with that right now. I like booting into my little Gentoo Linux thing. But yeah, I didn't notice too bad of a latency with Family Tracker on Wine. I just remember I did have to increase my buffer size. I think the initial was something like what, like 15 or 40 milliseconds. I had to put it to about 80, and then I was good. Yep, I've messed with some VMs like VirtualBox. I used to use VirtualBox Windows XP VM, but once I reformatted recently my OS X partition and just clean slate, and I tried Yosemite. Yosemite I feel is like the last OS revision that I feel safe upgrading to from this for this MacBook Pro. Takes a little longer to boot. It's not insane or anything, but I just feel like, alright. And probably the best was Mavericks for me. Maybe even the one before that. What came before that? Snow Leopard? Probably, oh no, Mountain Lion. Mountain Lion was probably it too. But whatever. I don't know, I hear a lot of crap. You know, one thing I don't like about the internet, and maybe I'm just on the wrong site, aka Facebook, but there's just so much junk flying around, you know? Like, I don't know what to believe anymore, even if it's technical stuff, or like operating systems, or people talking about Windows 10, Windows 10 this, Windows got spyware. I don't know what to believe, so. But I heard that Windows is going to be incorporating Bash. That sounds pretty cool. Then I don't have to know two different, subtly different syntax. Plus, I think Bash is way more powerful. Later, Dr. Mario. Nice having you. Even I'm looking at that, but yeah, I got you. I hate to admit it, but I'm pretty aware that Facebook probably lessens my IQ by a couple points. It's really strange experience for me. Well, you're looking at a guy who was kind of. I guess I'm a very serious. I don't know. I'm not like serious, but I don't like memes. I'm not a big fan of memes, and when they started getting popular, like I don't know how many years ago. It had to be about 8 years ago or something. I was just like, no. Even when Twitter started coming out and stuff, Facebook. I took a while to join Facebook and MySpace. I was always like one of the. I'm not the very last or anything, but definitely waited a long time. But when Twitter started coming out too, and then the memes, I was just like, the world, my future, why? I know, like I could just feel what I was getting into as far as the future, and why? So I think I'm gonna go and take a shower. But it was nice. I really enjoyed doing this stream. Didn't really do much hacking on the source code. I'll make sure I do that next time. But it was nice talking to you, and yeah, I'll see you again sometime, hopefully.